Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Minority Report, starring Tom Cruise, Colin Farrell, Samantha Morton, Max von Sydow, and Lois Smith, and directed by Steven Spielberg. Now, before I get into this movie, I must confess something right now. I saw this back in 2002, and this was probably my second favorite movie of that year, in front of Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire. So, so let's just get right into this and see if it's as good as the first time I saw the movie. We open the movie with a machine that makes wooden balls to say who the victim is and the suspect of murder, and I thought that was pretty neat. Tom Cruise's character, Chief John Anderton, is the man who stops the murders before they ever happen, which makes a clean America. But there will be problems with that throughout the movie. But it's still a pretty cool concept. This is Philip K. Dick, who wrote the original story, and I have reviewed him before with Blade Runner and the sequel. Colin Farrell as Denny Whitwer, who was in the FBI to investigate pre-crime, which is where Anderton works in the year 2054. I like Colin Farrell as a villain, including Daredevil, even if I didn't like the movie, and I do like this character as well. Anderton suffered a loss from his son Sean, and his wife divorced him days later, or years later, or something. I don't remember what it was, but while we get videos of Sean and the wife at the time, and I didn't mind that story of how broken Anderton is. Lamar Burgess, played by Max von Sydow, is the owner of Pre-Crime, and I really like him as a villain, which is almost in every movie, and he seems very suspicious of Danny going around asking questions, and Danny believes there's flaws and who's right at this point. We get introduced to Gideon, played by Tim Blake Nelson, who I enjoyed seeing in this movie. He's a very interesting character. The character I really loved is Agatha, played by Samantha Morton, because of her body language, and her performance is incredible. John witnesses a murder. He's a murderer of a man named Leo Crow. John has never heard of him and is fearing for his life and goes on the run, and I really feared for John because I really care for the character. I really had fun with the chase sequence with John and the pre-crime cops, and it was not only a fun sequence but very thrilling. The fight between John and Danny I had one problem with. And this was while they're fighting, and John just stands there and takes it. And suddenly he fights back like, wow, you're bad at fighting. But I do like when John is in the car and runs on. I thought that was an interesting move from this movie. John gets his eyes switched out, and when we see a machine pulling on his eyeballs, I have to confess, I have a phobia of eyeballs in the movies and in real life. Meanwhile, John gets a flashback of how he loses Sean in that sequence, and I didn't like because it's heartbreaking for parents. I might confess that too. I really like the robotic spiders Pre-Crime has, and I thought that was very cool, and they looked scary and neat. John takes Agatha out of the Pre-Crime, and this is what I meant when I was talking about Samantha Morton's performance and body language, and it's incredible acting by Miss Morton. Let's hear it for her. Moving on. John visits Leo Crow just to find out who he really is, and as it turns out, he was the kidnapper and the murderer of Sean, John's son. And John beats up Leo and accidentally shoots him because he wasn't going to kill him, but Crow forces John to shoot him. Did kind of throw me off. John decided not to kill him, and Leo begs him to do it. Didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Danny somehow figured out Lamar is a murderer, and Lamar shoots him, and John's wife calls Lamar and tells him not to send anyone, and Lamar tells John's wife to keep him there. And I called out bullshit because Lamar is going to tell some people, and get John arrested. And I was at the edge of my seat until he gets arrested. Everybody now knows and suddenly knows Lamar killed Anne Lively in the past, and it comes back to haunt him. And John confronts Lamar, and he almost shoots John, but instead shoots himself, and was an interesting way to end the movie, as well as how Pre-Crime was terminated to death. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 8.7 out of 10. This is Spielberg's surprisingly beautiful looking film, and I really like the characters in Spielberg with a good story by Philip K. Dick, and I really enjoyed this movie. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next week I will be back with War of the Worlds. And until next time, Pre-Crime. It works.